Okay, so let's unpack this. We've got this stack of sources you shared about Dholera Smart City. Huge vision, right? Everyone's talking about it.
Absolutely. It's this massive project in Gujarat.
But digging into these articles, these reports, the big question is, where's the actual, action? Where is the talk turning into concrete and steel right now?
That's really the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the overall plan is just vast, 920 square kilometers, I think.
Yeah, huge.
But you can't just start building everywhere at once on that scale. It has to begin somewhere specific, somewhere tangible.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do in this deep dive. We're zeroing in on that specific place. The sources keep mentioning the activation area.
Yeah.
We're going to use all this material you brought together to get a really close look at this critical zone.
Think of it as the initial spark, maybe the proof of concept for the whole Dholera dream. It's where the big blueprint first hits the actual ground.
Yeah.
In a focused way.
Right. So for this deep dive, we'll use these sources to figure out, okay, what is this activation area, really? What does the material say is physically built or being built there now?
Yeah, what's happening on the ground?
And why understanding the specific place is so important, especially if you, listening, have any interest in Dholera. Plus, crucially, what the sources warn you to watch out for.
Exactly. It's not just plans here. This is where, apparently, the future starts being built first. The verifiable starting point.
It's where the investment, the construction, it's all concentrated initially. So let's dive into these sources. What is the activation area? How do they define it?
Fundamentally, it's the very first zone, phase one, you could say, where the actual physical development work has kicked off.
Right.
The sources are quite clear. This is where they've actually started moving earth, putting up structures.
And it's not the whole 920 square kilometers, obviously. The size, the sources say 22.5 square kilometers.
Correct, 22.5. And specifically, it's located within Town Planning Scheme 2.
Right.
That's TP2 West.
TP2 West, okay.
And its main purpose, stated pretty clearly, is to be the pilot project. This is where they're building, testing, refining the whole smart infrastructure idea.
Before trying to roll it out across the much, much bigger region.
Exactly. The Dholera Special Investment Region, the whole thing.
So they're not just drawing lines on a map. The sources show actual foundational work happening here. Roads, water pipes, utilities, all underground.
Yeah, the critical stuff. And the digital command centers you'd need for a smart city. It's all going in here first.
Okay.
The logic, reading between the lines in these reports, seems to be, if we can make it work efficiently here in this, smaller 22.5 kilometer box.
Then it proves the model, shows it can be scaled up.
Precisely. It validates the whole approach.
Okay, so it's the test bed. But what's actually there? What's happening right now, based on what you've shared? What's moved beyond just planning?
Well, the sources detail some pretty significant completed infrastructure. For instance, L&T. They've reportedly finished 72 kilometers of smart roads within this area.
72 kilometers, okay. And smart roads, what makes them smart, according to these sources? What do they say?
That's the interesting bit. They specifically mention integrated ducting, buried right underneath the road surface.
Ducts for what?
Designed to carry everything. Electric lines, water pipes, ICT cables for data, even gas lines. It's like built-in utility corridors ready to go.
Huh. That's clever. So the messy part, the utilities, is already tucked away, ready for hookups. What else? Anything else completed?
Power-wise, yes. There's a 400 kV substation that's operational. It's feeding power directly into the activation area.
Okay, power's on.
And a big landmark, too. The Administrative and Business Center for Dholera, the ABCD building.
Yes, the ABCD building.
The sources say it's functional, already serving as the city's kind of first smart governance HQ.
Right, so you've got power, rows with built-in services, the main admin building, all documented as running in this area. What about land? Are plots being allocated for businesses or houses? Sources mention that.
They do, yeah. The sources indicate multiple plots have already been allocated within the activation area for different things.
Right.
Mentions of industrial units, warehousing spaces, logistics hubs, even some spots for tech labs, apparently.
And it's not just industry, right? I think I saw mentions of housing layouts, schools, commercial zones, too, all mapped out within this specific area.
Yes, exactly. Those are planned within this zone, too. And the sources really highlight this whole approach as, well, pretty unique for India.
How so?
This attempt to build a city truly bottom up. Yeah. Prioritize the core infrastructure, the utilities first. Get that skeleton and nervous system in place.
Before the buildings and people arrive. Create a ready-made base.
Right. Buildings follow the infrastructure, not the other way around.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's make this practical. Based on all this material, why is really understanding this specific activation area so critical for you, the listener, if you're interested in Dholera at all?
Because, well, simply put, this is ground zero for anything tangible happening, according to these sources anyway.
Right.
If you're even thinking about Dholera, maybe for investment, maybe a future business location, or maybe you just want to know if this whole massive project is actually moving, this is where you need to look first.
This is where the first businesses will actually be able to operate, where the first people might live.
Precisely. And because all the current verifiable activity is concentrated right here, the sources imply this is where land values are likely to appreciate first. As businesses start up and down the line, residents move in.
Makes sense.
Think about all the major stuff described in these documents.
Yeah.
Government land auctions, industrial plot sales, the first signs of private sector interest. It's all happening here, in the activation area.
And it's worth remembering that scale difference again. Dholera is planned for 920 square kilometers, absolutely huge. But this activation area, it's, what, less than 2.5% of that?
Exactly. Tiny fraction. But that concentration of actual building work makes it the undeniable focal point based on these sources.
So if you want to see proof of progress or find the maybe most reliable entry point to understand the project's reality, focus here.
It's where the documented construction is actually taking place. That seems to be the key takeaway.
Okay, specifics then. What about land prices? Does the material you shared give any indication of costs within this specific active zone?
It does give a range, yeah. The sources suggest current land prices inside the activation area. They vary quite a bit, actually, generally somewhere between 1,000 and maybe 3,000 rupees per square meter.
Big range.
Yeah, and they clarify it depends heavily on things like, well, what the plot is designated for, industrial, residential, commercial, and critically, the title status. Is it clear?
Okay. And even within the activation area, are some spots better than others? Do the sources suggest that? Like prime locations?
Oh, absolutely. Like any property market, right? Location, location, location.
Uh-huh.
The sources suggest that being close to the key infrastructure that's already built or definitely coming soon, that's crucial.
So like near the ABCD building or the new expressway.
Yes, exactly. Proximity to the ABCD building, easy access to the planned 10-lane expressway that will connect the area, or maybe being on one of those plug-and-play industrial plots.
Where the utility connections are already right there at the plot boundary?
Right. Those factors, according to this material, are expected to mean better future returns for land within the activation area itself.
That's really helpful detail. Add some nuance even within this zone. Now, importantly, the sources you shared also have warnings. What are the main things they flag? Like potential pitfalls for someone looking at Dholera?
This is super important, yeah. The sources are quite direct here. While the activation area is where the documented stuff is happening, you need to be really careful.
Okay.
They explicitly warn that not everything being sold or marketed using the Dholera name is necessarily a good investment, especially not short term.
What's the common trap they point out?
A big issue, highlighted repeatedly, is developers selling land that's actually way outside this specific activation area. Miles away, potentially.
So it's technically in the wider Dholera region, but not where anything is actually being built yet.
Precisely. It might just be agricultural land, or land that isn't even zoned yet within that vast 920 square kilometer area, with no planned infrastructure coming nearby for, well, who knows how long. Could be years, decades maybe.
Okay, so the clear advice, pulling directly from this source material you've provided, is
always check the specific town planning scheme number, the TP number.
Make sure it's TP2 West or another zone that's confirmed as actively developing.
Exactly. Like TP2 West, where the activation area is. And critically, make sure the land title is clear, verified.
And who you buy from matters.
Absolutely. Buy only from verifiable sources. That means, ideally, the government bodies running the official auctions, maybe established developers who have a clear, documented track record of actually working within these designated active zones, like the activation area.
Right. And one final thing, timelines. The sources manage expectations there too, don't they? This isn't get rich quick.
Definitely not. They're very consistent on this. It's a long-term play. Realistically, you should probably be thinking 5 to 10 years for significant returns or, for the development to really mature.
Not 5 months.
Absolutely not 5 months. Building a city from scratch, especially doing infrastructure first, it just takes time, a lot of time.
Okay, so wrapping this up from these sources, the main message seems to be The activation area isn't just a piece of Dholera. It's really where the future of Dholera actually starts.
Yeah.
Because it's where the digging, the building, the testing, it's all documented as happening right now.
Yeah. If you're serious about understanding Dholera, maybe getting involved somehow, your homework, your initial focus, it really has to start with this specific 22.5 square kilometer zone.
It's the core of the current verifiable activity.
Seems to be.
And knowing about this specific active zone, thanks to these sources, it sets us up perfectly for next steps. We can build on this. Maybe a future deep dive could look at how you might invest or get involved the right way.
Step by step.
Exactly. Now that we've pinpointed where the actual documented action is.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, it raises a bigger thought, too, looking at these sources. Building a city like this, infrastructure first, over 10, maybe 20 years, it takes incredible long-term vision.
From everyone involved. Planners, investors.
Right. So what does that really mean for how we think about urban planning, about investment, when you have to commit to that kind of patient timeline, just to see a smart city actually rise out of the ground?
Well, it's a pretty fascinating question these sources leave you with.